Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee and Crypto Live. I wish I had some great news for you guys. We do have some still optimistic lookouts, but today is looking quite red already, and we might not be over. For those of you who do not know, the CPI numbers came out this morning, and while technically they are down, they were higher than expected at 8.3, but what's even worse is when you're looking at some of the core inflation numbers, they are increasing, and if you have not looked at the charts already, Bitcoin is down almost $1,500 since the announcement. It is going red. And the other one, we're going to talk more about this here in just a couple of minutes in our market pulse. But the investing.com site that we use to look at maybe the predictions of what the next basis point rate will be increased to has flipped. And what I mean by flipped is no longer are the two options 75 basis points and 50, but now we're seeing potentially upwards of 20% of the predictors saying that we could see an 100 basis point increase, and that number could increase or lower. We'll have to wait another week. However, at this point, 75 is looking like it could be the best end of the deal with a chance of 100 points. And that is all on top of the fact that the Ethereum merge is still happening this week, which should bring a sell the news release. So how bad could crypto get? We're going to be talking about all of that and more in this show, so make sure you don't go away. George is going to be joining us at about 10:20, so make sure if you guys love Cryptos R Us, we are all George. We love him. He's joining the show. We're going to be talking more about these numbers and the Ethereum merge. We also have some interesting information coming from Raoul Paul, who has a, I don't know if I fully agree with him just yet, but has a very interesting thought about the bottom of Bitcoin. You're going to want to hear about that, so stick around. It's going to be a fantastic show today, guys. I am joined by two of the absolute best co-hosts in the entire world. I got TShroom over here to my right. How you doing this morning, TShroom?
I'm doing fantastic.
How you feeling about that market pulse here in a little bit?
Oh, it's going to be pulsating, that's for sure.
This is going to be a good one, absolutely. I'm also joined by Smay the Turtle King running the tech over here to my left. How you doing, Smay?
Hello.
Wow, there he is.
Love it. Love the energy. Man, chat, I want to hear what you guys have to say about this because it is definitely an interesting morning. I had a feeling that we would be rejecting soon. We got a little bit lower. I was expecting us to get all the way up to at least 22,800 on Bitcoin before we reversed, maybe getting all the way to 23. We got to about 22,700, give or take, and now we're heading back down. I want to hear what you guys think about this opinion. At the moment, if it were to end right now, I would win this week Hollow Trophy, but we still got some time before that is over. I did not expect it, though, to be dropping this quickly. I thought it would be a lot slower. I thought it would take a couple more days. So we got some interesting stuff to do here. We're going to be looking at the charts after George is on the show and help you guys navigate this. But I'd love to hear your guys' take because you know that this show is not about me. It's not about TShroom. It's not about Smay. This is a we thing. We are building the absolute greatest and most uplifting and informative community in all of crypto. And so everyone who's already likes these videos and subscribes to the channel, thank you guys so much for being a part. But if you're new here, make sure it's really easy and really free. Like the button, like the video, subscribe to the channel for content that helps you. We cover everything you need to know about crypto so that you can make wise investments. If that's something you love, you're in the right place. I'm going to throw it, though. Speaking of our community that is so great, we got some members in chat. We call them our green names because if you're watching on a computer, they're put there by green names. I'm going to throw it to Smay to do the reading of those green names. So take it away there, Smaynold.
Hear ye, all rise for the reading of the green names. Crypto JFP, Grand Incorporated, Mike Lowry, Elliot Locke, Justin Eubanks, Colin McDonald, Mike Lowry, Jojo, Elliot Locke, and then blue names, Matt C, Brad Geidel, Daniel J, Tyler Main, and also, man, you are awesome and all you guys are great.
Wow.
Smay, I have done a horrible thing.
What did you do?
I completely forgot to join into the Zoom link today. So I'm going to have to do that right now while we're waiting on George because, we'll have more time here, but I completely forgot to do that. And you did a great announcement there of the green names, but sorry, catching up here. Whew! Fun morning so far. Very busy morning, but That was the reading of our green names. I'm catching back up, guys. My brain is all scattered as we get back into information. But we're about to jump into our market pulse, the TShroom. But in case you guys are wondering, our market pulse was brought to you today by Anthony Price. If you guys don't know who Anthony Price is, he is a fantastic CPA who does crypto. A lot of you who do taxes and use CPAs know the value of helping you navigate all the taxes of normal taxes just to save as much money as you can. But if you think that normal taxes are complicated, just wait until you have to handle your crypto ones as well. But you can save yourself a lot of trouble and save yourself a lot of money by using a crypto CPA. And Anthony Price is just the guy for you. There's a link in the description down below. You get a free 15-minute conversation with him. And if he cannot save you money, if he looks at all your information and says, I don't think I can help you, he does not take you as a client. He's that honest of a guy. Make sure, just give him a call, get some advice and some counsel from him today. With that said, though, we're going to go to TShroom and we're going to dive into this very juicy, very informative market pulse.
That's right. Well, if you'll go to my screen, Smay, you will see that if you are listening to the sound of my voice, that can mean only one thing, and that is that you are in the market pulse, baby. Let's do it. All right. Starting off with those numbers, Tim went over them a little bit, but let's really dive into the actual figures. So the inflation rate year over year previously was 8.5, so that was the previous print. And today we got 8.3. So that did actually decelerate. So we've got a little bit of improvement there, but that is only the headline inflation. And as you can see just above this, the core inflation rate year over year came in hotter than previous. Previous was 5.9, today's print 6.3. And you can also see that that overpaced forecast. So this was a really hot print, indicating very clearly that inflation has not peaked quite yet. So meaning that it could continue to go higher from here. It is not a certainty that inflation has peaked, and that is big data for the market. Also, the headline inflation also outpaced its forecast. So while it beat previous print, it outpaced its forecast, which is not a good thing. It's a bearish thing. We'll zoom into a little bit. This is the headline breakdown. This is not the core breakdown, but it may be tough to see because this is small print. But you can see here, energy went down -5. So, and then energy services went up 2, but gasoline and oil went down 10%, respectively. Well, so energy commodities went down, gasoline went down 10%, fuel and oil actually went down 5, closer to 6% there, which means that which means that it went down. It went well. It actually went pretty well from a headline inflation standpoint. Actually, it was not the worst outcome, but going back, it did actually come out higher than what the forecast was. So what is the difference between core and headline inflation, you might be asking? Because you're looking at these numbers. What is going on here? Well, core inflation is measuring a basket of goods, just like any other CPI, but it does not. So it excludes food and fuel costs. So food and fuel is based into the headline inflation, but it is not reflected in the core inflation. So core inflation is looking at other things, and so that's why these have different outcomes today. And so the market, look, here's the whole thing, is that the market is going to have to digest this mixed signals from inflation today. They're going to have to figure out exactly what it means and how the Fed is going to interpret it. And right now, as you can see, the Dixie has gotten bought on this news. The stock market, meaning the S&P, has gone down on this news. It actually gapped down on this daily chart. And yeah, so not looking super great, not looking super optimistic. This was not the print we were looking for. I wanted this print to be much lower on the core and the headline side, and that's not what we got. But we're going to move on. Looking at the fear and greed, which is a lagging indicator, has actually trended out of extreme fear back into fear. From 25, it is now 34. So that's, that was pricing in that rally that we saw at the beginning, over the weekend in Bitcoin, and all the headlines that came out about that. So here's another interesting outcome of this headline inflation and core inflation print, is that you may be thinking, 75 basis points is now only 17%. If you watch our show and you look at this graph every day, you might be thinking that, but actually no. So what has happened here? 50 basis points is now off the table. This investing.com has now taken 50 basis points off the table. They don't even care about that anymore because 17% is now 100 basis points. So 17% of CME future traders are basically, it filters through a secondary system, but 17% of those traders are thinking that it's going to be a 100 basis point hike. Now, it's still pretty unlikely. We're still almost definitely going to see, so this represents the 75 basis point hike, and that is still overwhelmingly the way that it's looking like it's going to go. And you can see that has changed over time, but that according to this graph, it's high and it's not coming down, whereas the 100 basis point hike, it hasn't even gotten, you can see that straight line. That's evidence that there hasn't even been data on that since mid-July for this print specifically. So that is very, very interesting development there. Again, 100 basis points is now back on the table. Personally, I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think this is a hot enough print by any means. It's still lower than the peak that we had, but it is not, it's not showing signs that it's ready to just go all the way back down. It's not showing signs of that yet. And while oil prices are continuing to be our friend here, they're continuing to go lower. I can pull that up actually really quickly. As you can see, so this is June here, and then going into July here, and then August, you can see that the prices have stayed kind of below this major resistance point, which is good, but and it's gone lower, but the fact of the matter is that core inflation, as we saw, it does not take into consideration fuel prices in the same way that headline inflation does, which just tells policymakers, it tells Jerome Powell that more rate hikes are needed, in the sense that that's the tool that they use to try to fight inflation. All right, we're going to move into our stories here. Tim, did you have any quick comments on inflation, or are you ready to just go to the stories?
There was a question. I think this is a good time to kind of answer this, and I'll be as quickly as possible. But Elliot Locke was commenting at me, and I'll try to read exactly what he said. He actually did both of us. He said, there was a comment I just saw that formulates a cool question. Why does crypto dip/crash when the CPI comes out like it did today? And I'm going to give this a very quick answer, and you can tag onto it if you want to. But ultimately, what we're looking at, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more with a different story here in a couple of minutes, but it's all about trying to expect what the future looks like. So we just went from an outside hope of 50 basis points to now there's an outside hope of 100 basis points. And that's not hope, I guess, an outside fear of 100 basis points. As what we're seeing happen right now, despite the fact that we've seen 2 75 basis point rate hikes in the last two, it did not curb inflation. Inflation is continuing to rise when you look at those core inflation numbers. So what that means is this is not only affecting what September is going to look like, and I know we're going to have a month off in October, but what is November going to look like? Again, because it looks like 75 basis points is not doing the job. This is putting a lot of fear in the market and expectation that down the road, inflation is going to continue to be a problem, that the economy is going to continue to be a problem. The Dixie, the dollar power should continue to rise. And because of that, because of those thoughts, what we're predicting down the road is it's going to be a bigger issue than it is right now. And we'll talk more, but this is all about expectations, and the market was not ready for this expectation. And therefore, because it's different, now we're going to see prices dip again until we start to see some reason to think we can control this.
Yep, absolutely. The good news is now there's certainty, right? So there should, in theory, be slightly less volatility. But the long and short of it is now money is expected to become increasingly more expensive into the future. That's ultimately what all this boils down to. So when investors are going out to look for new things to invest in, that they know in the back of their mind that the money they're going to invest with is more expensive to obtain now and in the future. So they are less likely to put that money into higher risk assets, and Bitcoin is considered very much as a high risk asset. Moving into our stories, Starbucks is now going to offer NFT-based loyalty programs using Polygon's blockchain technology. So Polygon getting another big win here. And I'll just go through this quickly. Starbucks is set to begin a non-fungible token-based loyalty program with the blockchain technology provided by Polygon. The program is to be built on Polygon's proof-of-stake network, a scaling tool that sits on top of Ethereum's network. Applications that run on Polygon and other scalers can avoid some of the high costs and low transaction speeds caused by congestion on Ethereum's main network. Guys, this is what Layer 2 is all about. Let's just take a minute here. Polygon, kind of a Layer 2 for Ethereum. Most people would consider it to be, but actually we go into the details of Polygon and Layer 2s in yesterday's Crypto Foundations video, so go check that out. Tim made that, and it's really, really awesome. But reading along with the Starbucks article, customers can now join a waitlist to gain access to Starbucks' Odyssey. I guess that's the name of the program. Really, the takeaway here is adoption, right? Starbucks, very large multinational retailer, and they are now going to be integrating NFTs into their service offering here, specifically for their loyalty programs. And it's also a giant win for Polygon. This has not launched yet, I don't believe, but when it does, again, Polygon is going to get another headline boost. Moving into our next story, former Goldman Sachs executive says Bitcoin and crypto bottom may already be in. He predicts a big shift in the macroeconomic backdrop. Just going to read his quotes. And if you don't know who this is, Raoul Paul, really big investor. People pay attention to him. Has a lot of respect from the street. Right now, we can hear people all on Twitter saying, we're going into recession. It's clear there's going to be another leg down in equities because they need to price in a recession. That's assuming everything operates in real time, but it doesn't. Again, his quotes. So when I look at the year-on-year rates of change, let's say of the NASDAQ, and compare it to the ISM index, which is my guide to the business cycle, it suggests that the NASDAQ is pricing in ISM at around 40. ISM at 40 is in a relatively deep recession. ISM at 47 is usually a recession level, and 40 is something to the order of magnitude of a -2 GDP growth. So it's already priced in because we've had -2 GDP growth. If we look out 12 months, his quote continues, the recession is behind us, rates are lower, and inflation is low. So that is a very good outcome for risk assets and crypto. Crypto bottomed in June. We had the retest. Bitcoin had a retest only 2 days ago, and I think it was a retest. Okay. Again, these are verbal quotes, so sometimes it doesn't always translate super well. But I mean, obviously a huge takeaway here. He thinks that crypto bottomed in June. And then the last quote that I'll read from him is, I'm thinking the markets are forward-looking. I think the sentiment is extremely bearish, and we're going into a potential change in the macro. So the sentiment, meaning what people think. So that's really the main thesis here, is that the sentiment is bearish, but markets, specifically crypto markets, may not be pricing in the macro changes that are coming around the corner. Basically, what he's speaking to here is that while this print today is going to absolutely indicate that the Fed is going to do a 75 basis point hike, in the future, at some point, they're not going to do that anymore. And Ray is kind of saying that crypto will not see lower prices before we have some optimistic rate lowerings. Before we start, so Bitcoin will not go lower. It won't go lower than 17,000. I can't remember the specific
It's like
print.
17,600.
Yeah, 17,600. We won't go down and test there. We won't go lower than that before the Fed goes ahead and changes and says, hey, inflation is now less of an issue, and we're going to go ahead and bring down rates. That is not an environment that we can imagine right now, but it's one that he can imagine. He's been through many, many bear markets, not just in crypto, through many, many bear markets. And so he is convinced that crypto is at a bottom. And man, it's tough to imagine that, but he's a very educated trader, educated investor, and you got to imagine that there's some grounding for sure to his argument. If you don't know what the ISM is, I strongly recommend that you go check that out. That is a really, really interesting and important indicator. So go check that out. Tim, what do you think about these quotes from Ray Dalio?
I think they're Ray Dalio or Raoul Paul. Yeah. I mean, if Ray Dalio said something, that'd be cool too.
Yeah, all smart guys.
I'm not quite sure what I think about it just yet. And I'm really interested because I just saw this late last night. And I've only had one day to kind of chew on. I'm going to get George's opinion on this as well. Probably even ask a couple other people. But what he's pretty much getting at is that prices take harsh dips when something unexpected happens. Let's just boil down his argument. When unexpected things happen, the price takes a hard dip or a massive rally. But when we know something is coming, and let's just be very honest, I think the only people in the entire planet at this point that don't think we're in a recession or at least headed for one are the people working in the White House. Everybody else is under the impression and understands we are in a recession and we are heading for one. The question is, how bad does it get?
Yeah.
So his point is, this isn't sneaking up on us. Investors plan ahead of time. When they see something coming, when there's a surety of something coming, prices starts getting baked in. We've known now for a while that the recession is here. So his point, and again, I don't know what to do with this just yet, his point is we don't need to go any lower. All these people calling for 15,000, 10,000, 9,000, that is not reliable right now unless something new comes into the space. And recession and high inflation is not that thing because we've known that inflation is high and we've known we're heading for a recession. So it's a very interesting argument that I want to continue to chew on. And by the way, I feel like every influencer that I've watched, every crypto influencer, even the ones that are saying they think it's going lower, have said there's not a guarantee. We absolutely could double bottom or keep 17.6 as the bottom. They're just expecting a lower price. The question is, what is the likelihood of us going below 17,600? And that's where I'm kind of sitting in a little bit of a conundrum, saying I don't really fully know. And Raul Paul just muddied the waters because he makes a great point. The market knows we're in a recession. So why aren't we dipping below 17.6 now? Why did we stop at 18,500? Why didn't we go ahead and go below 17.6 then? We knew recession was coming, but we went back up.
Yeah.
Are we in a range? Are we going to be going in a range between 17,600 and maybe 23,000, 25,000 for a while as we wait for something new to develop, whether that be something new bullish or whether it be something new bearish?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to wrap this up quickly, but there's two more important, actually, I think I'll just do one more important story because the other side of the Federal Reserve's dual mandate is unemployment. And this next story, Smay, if you'll go to my screen, is perhaps an early warning that labor is getting a little bit angry, getting a little unsettled. Large railroad labor unions say they will strike if quality of life is not addressed in new contract. So why am I bringing up railroad labor unions right now? Well, it's extremely big news, and bear with me if you can, but roughly 40% of the nation's long-distance trade moves by rails, and the idling of 7,000 trains daily would trigger retail product shortages and widespread manufacturing shutdowns. So this would further contribute to inflation in a negative way. Let me see if I can find this. It looks like my highlighter tool is not working on this, but I think I can find it. Let's see. It's to the tune of several billions of dollars of revenue that will be lost in the economy. Yeah, it's not going to work with me here, but this is not good. And you want to pay attention to this because labor stories now are extremely important. If labor starts to go up, because look, the recession that we're in right now, yeah, it's a lot of people are considering it to technically be a recession, but it hasn't been hitting labor. And usually that's the key characteristic of a recession is that laborers start to really feel the pain. Unfortunately, a lot of people die during recessions because of loss of revenue, loss of jobs, and things like that. It's really, really sad. But that actually is something we're not seeing right now. The unemployment rate is actually staying in kind of a target zone right now. So headlines like this, where there's major strikes, major unions being in the headlines, that is not what you want to see because that is actually the negative effects of recession. So basically, we're in a recession, we're not really feeling the negative effects of what recessions usually have, but now we are still starting to see, especially if you're in the real world, the railroad world, you are starting to see a lot of unrest. Tim, I'm going to kick it over to you so we can end the market pulse.
Boom. Yeah, well, I mean, we ran a little long, but that's okay because there was some, again, great information coming out this morning. A lot of stuff for us to wrestle with. But speaking of wrestling with stuff, I can't wait to wrestle with a lot of this stuff with George. So we're going to go and bring him on. George, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
I'm doing as fantastic as can be, I guess, with the data that we received. But I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Dude, we're doing great. I got a lot of questions for you when it comes to crypto. But the first question we're going to start with, we do with all our guests now, is the question of the day. And I'm going to quickly throw it to TShroom. George, I want to hear your answer first.
Yep, Smay, do not go to my screen for this one. But would you rather have the ability to see 30 days into the future or experience 1 day from the past? I'll let that sink in and I'll read it again. Would you rather have the ability to see 30 days into the future or be able to experience 1 day, just 1 day from the past? So, Tim, I'll throw it to you.
Well,
what do you think?
George first.
Oh, George first? Yeah, George, what do you think?
I'm trying to think. This is one of those questions that seem too easy.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of the benefits that you can get from seeing or reliving one day in the past. I just don't see it.
Okay.
Seeing 30 days ahead seems much more beneficial, so I'm gonna go with that.
Okay.
Key word there. When it comes to the word experience, do you just relive the exact same moment, or can you change choices you've made in the past?
Nope, you would just go experience it. So you could you could be there for the moon landing. You could be there for the resurrection of Christ. You could be there for the building of the pyramids. You know, you could be there for a lot of different things. But
that is actually okay. I was about to agree and say, George, that's a really easy answer to say 30 days in the future. But now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, how much? Because we're not talking about endless 30 days in the future. We're talking about one time.
Yep.
You could look 30 days in the future, or you could go live one. I don't know if there's so much information that could happen in the next 30 days that it could outweigh. I feel like what you said. Maybe it would be really cool to go back to a certain. I don't know what day I would choose.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's more power to that. I'm gonna disagree with George. I'm gonna say one day, experience one day in the past.
What day would it be?
I gotta think on that one.
I already know.
But I'm gonna hold that. I'm gonna hold that in my pocket to choose at a later time.
Okay, Smay, what's your answer?
My answer is I would go back to the one day that they discussed the first formula for that Byzantium dragon breath fire, where it can't be, like, the formula was lost to time, and it was like fire that can't be put out or something like that.
Wow.
So I would go back to that day when they're, like, dividing up the formula and memorize that formula, bring it back to science now, and I would win a lot of awards. It'd be great.
Wow, that's very selfless of you, Smay. Excellent. And very quickly, and we'll see what the chat's saying, I would look 30 days in the future, like George, so I could see what the price of the Dow and Bitcoin is, and then I would just leverage the crap out of a position.
What if it's boring, though? That's my only thing. What if 30 days is boring? Like, what if we continue to do sideways?
You would just be able to go. You would be able to see what the price of the S&P is, and it doesn't matter what it is. You just leverage trade.
I guess
in that
like
direction.
100x leverage.
I guess you just did during.
Yeah. Was the chat making any kind of interesting comments?
I've seen a couple of both.
Okay,
George. After getting to hear everybody else's answer, do you stick with your 30 days in the future, or would you change your answer?
I think you guys are overthinking this way too much. You know, in the next 30 days, how many lotteries you can win, how many Powerballs and Mega Millions. That'll make you a billionaire easily within the next 30 days. So, I mean, if you want to make money, you see 30 days ahead of time. Screw 10x or 100x leverage on Bitcoin. Go buy all the lottery tickets.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's more laborious.
I completely forgot the lottery existed. I'm so involved in the crypto space that the truth. Why would people with crypto? Why would people continue to enter the lottery? Anyway,
awesome.
Let's go ahead and transition back into crypto, though. Thank you so much, George. Great answer. Great thought experiment with those two questions. But let's start off on the CPI numbers, George, and then we're going to transition into the thing we were kind of talking about at the end of the market pulse. What was your initial response? I got to catch a little bit of your show this morning. In case you guys don't watch it, make sure every single morning you guys go watch George, by the way. Fantastic, fantastic show. But what is your overall takeaway at this point? What is your expectations about crypto and specifically Bitcoin moving on in the future after these numbers came out?
Well, I think we definitely see that correlation, right? Unfortunately, Bitcoin is still very correlated with the rest of the U.S. market. Unintentionally, but it is, because I think a lot of institutions and Wall Street and traders, they got into Bitcoin in 2021. You know, they FOMO'd in, probably not due to the right reasons. They just came in because it was going up, was the hottest thing, and they all came in. Unfortunately, they just treat it as a risk-on asset. And they treat it as like a tech play, right? And right now they're just going by the playbook. When the rates are going up, they've learned don't fight the Fed, right? And usually when rates go up, you want to sell off your risk-on assets, go with risk-off assets, which really what Bitcoin is. It's a risk-off asset. But it's not being treated that way. So I think, unfortunately, this correlation is not going to be broken for quite some time until we get more liquidity in the space, until we get more maturity, and the space becomes much bigger, more widely used, not just Bitcoin isn't just a speculative asset. It's actually a payment network and a store of value that globally 8 billion people are participating in, right? Until we get to a much bigger state, we're going to see this correlation. So whenever there is some kind of news like inflation data that's really bad, that affects the US markets and probably will affect the world markets, you know, it's affecting Bitcoin now, but in the future, it won't. But we're not there yet. So,
you know how many cycles are you, I know this is impossible because you don't get to see 30 days in the future, let alone years in the future. How many cycles, George, are you expecting before we could potentially see Bitcoin be treated like a risk off asset rather than risk on?
I would say at least two, at least two, if not three. Once Bitcoin's market cap becomes equal to gold, I would say that's when it would be uncorrelated and become a risk off asset.
Makes a lot of sense. And I probably had a little bit of time before we get there. But now, moving forward, George, I don't know if you saw the predictions. I know we talked about it. I don't know if you got to hear us when we were talking about it a little bit before, unless you looked at it on your show as well. Like I said, I didn't get to catch all of it. But have you seen those numbers? The prediction is now moved from where we were kind of debating. It looked like 75 was a sure thing, but there was an outside chance of a 50 basis point rate hike. Now it's looking like the options are 75 and 100. What are your thoughts about that? And what do you think is the likelihood? Again, it's the first day, so a lot of things can change. But what do you think is the likelihood we could potentially see the Fed push all the way up to 100 points?
I still think it's unlikely. I did cover that this morning. It was like 14% chance that it could be 100 basis points.
Yeah.
But, you know, looking back at what Powell have said before, 75 basis points is already very high. And he said they'll only do that in I guess, in not weird situations, but in the situation we're in right now, which is not normal. Okay. So, and obviously he did it twice. He said that there could be a chance he could go higher, but he does not see it. And I do think based on this morning's reading, even though core inflation did go up unexpectedly a little bit more than expected, overall CPI still went down because energy or gas went down. So it's not a horrible reading.
Now,
so because of that, I don't think he has to go to extreme measures and raise rates to 100 basis points, which is really bad if you think about it. I think if that did happen, you know, Dow will be down like negative 3,000 points or something like that. Yeah, if that happened. And even though he pretends like he doesn't care about what the market does after his announcements, he really does, right? There's no way he wants to induce a catastrophe in the markets. That would not be advantageous at all in any way, right? So he still has to be careful. And I think we're still going to get 75 basis points.
Absolutely.
What I was going to ask was, you know, with those some of those CPI numbers going down, correct me if I'm wrong, TShroom, or George, I don't know if you follow this as well. Isn't oil back up on the rise? Isn't oil prices increasing at the moment?
I would say if you go over to my screen, you can see actually they're kind of not.
They steadied out.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm taking a second to pull it up here, but yeah, no, they've come to, yeah. So I mean, in the last little bit here, since the 8th, they've kind of been on a little bit of a move higher. But no, I'd say they're in a great place for. You want an economy that can buy cheap oil. That's gonna be good for inflation, especially. So I'd say it's still very much squarely in a cheap territory, but it is coming up a little bit. But that's just the market.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's going to be, I don't know, George, do you have an opinion on that? But I think that's going to be really important because that is the one thing I think that helped some of the CPI numbers go down. Obviously, when oil goes up, that's a big, that doesn't just affect oil. That's going to affect the food that goes up. That's going to affect a lot of different, energy and everything else. What are your expectations about that, George? Do you expect oil to stay, kind of in those lower levels, or do you think that oil could increase? Are we past all that? I know a lot of that had to do with the war that was happening with Russia and Ukraine, and even though we haven't heard as much about that, it is still ongoing. Do you think we're on our way back down with oil prices, or is there a chance we see an increase coming soon?
I don't think oil is going to come down significantly anytime soon, as long as the war is ongoing. I mean, here's the thing that always irritates me about oil is that the U.S., if you look at the data, the U.S. is the second largest producer of oil in the world, yet we store most of that. No, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Producer. We're second largest oil producer in the world. Yeah, we store most of that. We do very little exporting, and we use very little of that for ourselves. It's all stored for military use, I guess. So if we wanted to, we can make oil as cheap as possible, or gas as cheap as possible, as you know, in the U.S. But unfortunately, that's not how we operate. So we still buy a lot of oil from overseas. Obviously, with the war going on, these sanctions against Russia was a big exporter of oil, and it still is. But because of these sanctions, there's less of it flowing to everywhere else. OPEC, they said they're going to increase production just slightly. It's not in their best interest to lower the price of oil. Why would they? They don't need to increase production. They're reaping the profits right now, so they're not really helping. So I don't think oil is going to come down significantly anytime soon. I'm looking at right now, it's like 87, which is great because we were above $100 per barrel not too long ago, a few months ago. So we're lower now, but I don't anticipate it's going to drop significantly until the war is over or until somehow the sanctions are lifted. Because right now the situation in Europe is not looking good. Not looking good as we're heading into winter.
We're gonna move on and talk about some price stuff here with you, George. My first question. So with the CPI numbers coming out, obviously Bitcoin is down now officially over $1,600, pushing closer to $1,700 since the announcement this morning. How much further do you think Bitcoin has to go down? And then remember, the other piece of information coming out this week is that Ethereum merge, which, while that's good for the long-term success of Ethereum and crypto, could come with a sell the news release, at least for Ethereum, in which case I also would expect there be pressure on other cryptos there as well. What are your expectations for this price action? Do you think that we're going to kind of settle down around 21,000 or so, or do you think we have further to go down before it gets better?
I mean, this kind of relates to what you guys were saying before I came on, what you were saying, Raul Paul was saying. There's nothing out there that says we have to have exact double bottom at 17.6 before we could rise again. There's a lot of chartists out there that do think we do need to hit certain levels before we could bounce back and recover, right? When it comes to TA, I've always said it's 50-50. It could happen. It cannot happen. Can we go lower? Yes. Can we retest 17K? Yes. Can we go below that? Can we go 15K or 10K? There's always a possibility, but the chances of it is low. And there's no guarantee that even if we did, that things will just bounce right back up, right? So basically, you have to take everything into account. You gotta put two and two together, I guess. Use educated guesses and pay attention to what's going on around the world and kind of formulate your thesis, right? And my thesis is we look at like the 2018, 2019 low, and the 2018, 2019, we saw Bitcoin drop to about 3,000, and then it stood there between 3,000 to 5,000 for many, many months, like 3 to 4 months. And it was very bleak then, much worse than now. We're all panicking at 21,000, but in 2018 we were panicking at 3,000, so very different time. But it stood there for a long time until it didn't, and it broke out. You can never confirm bottom until enough time has passed, and then you can say, okay, that was the bottom, right? But during the time, living the moment, you can't say for sure. At that time, there were a lot of guys that came out and said, oh, Bitcoin is going to test 1,000. It needs to test 1,000 before it could recover. Well, obviously that was not true. Yeah. A lot of people were talking about, oh, it had to hit 1,200, and Peter Schiff was still saying it was going to 0, right? So we've seen times like this where people have come out and said, okay, must hit this before this happens, or make some other kind of guesses, but we just don't know. But I'm thinking that we've been hovering here for quite some time. Our bottom of 17.6, and we've been slowly recovering. We recently just retested 18,000, right? Pretty close to 17.6. So I think we're going to hover in this range for a little bit, but I'm still hoping for that we're going to see some kind of significant momentum or rally toward the end of the year. possibly starting October, November, December, that could push us back to 30K. That's what I'm hoping for, and possibly go even higher, maybe even break through that, maybe in 40K. I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I'm still hoping that happens, and we'll see. Now, as for Ethereum, real quick, Ethereum has been selling off the last few days already. Outside of today, it started losing steam yesterday already. And today, obviously, with the overall market sell-off, Ethereum went down even more. So this whole thing about buy the rumor, sell the news, I think sell the news already happened. I don't see Ethereum dumping to, let's say, below 1,000 after the merge, unless there's something disastrous that happens, a major hack or something. I don't see that happening. I think a lot of people started dumping Ethereum already ahead of the merge, which should be coming either later tonight or tomorrow. So we'll see. But I think that already begun. So I don't think we're going to see some kind of additional sell-off for Ethereum.
Yeah.
And even if we do, the important thing is long-term, this merge, moving to proof of stake, helps Ethereum tremendously, because most people still don't realize the ETH issuance drops by like 90%.
Yeah.
And essentially it makes Ethereum deflationary after this merge, which is a big deal. So,
that I was actually literally just about to ask you what your thoughts are on that. So I'm glad you brought that up. There's been a couple different people we've had on this show. Some people are saying that's the reason Ethereum could have a nice little rally here very soon. Some people are saying, no, it's not going to play a factor. It sounds like I heard your opinion is you think that is going to play a factor. The question is how much, because even, one of the things that people compare it to, and it's a greater percentage, when people talk about the Bitcoin halving events and how Bitcoin begins to climb after Bitcoin halving, well, halving is only 50%, obviously. This is a 90% one. But I went back and looked at it. Normally, the next couple of weeks, so it's usually about a 1 or 2 week period following halving events, that Bitcoin actually corrects and goes down a little bit as it's catching up, and then the upward momentum happens. Do you think Ethereum could see something similar, or potentially finish out September moving bearish? Septembers are historically bearish for stocks and cryptos anyway. Do you think we finish the month of September and then see a fresh increase in October for Ethereum, where maybe then it goes on to take the lead in the entire crypto space and grow due to that 90% cut in daily supply?
Well, I threw all this historical, data out the window for this year, because there were months that was supposed to be great for equities and crypto, and it turned out to be horrible anyways. This year is just completely different. We're in a completely different kind of recession, and because of all the rate hikes that's happening still in a technical recession, like, there's a lot of things that's not normal. So this whole thing about September historically is bad, right? I just throw that out the window, because I think that this year is just different. So I'm sorry, Tim, I forgot your second part of it.
You're good. I mean, just the concept of 2 weeks, and maybe we finish out September again, like Bitcoin halvings, where we usually see a couple of weeks of downward action before the real rally comes, because we always do see a rally after the halving events. Are we going to maybe have a little bit of a delay, and then that issue of economics, when the supply drops and the demand doesn't drop at the same rate, the price goes up. Well, we see that finally come into effect. But I think you kind of answered it as a whole. George, before I let you go, a question I have literally every single time I watch your show, and every time I have you on here. You are a very optimistic guy. You love Bitcoin. You love the crypto space. You are one of the biggest drivers to really give people hope that the space, even when reports are giving us so much bearish stuff, you're like, hey, even if we move down, there's still a lot of stuff happening. However, you always do it with this demeanor and this person. You are the most even-keeled person I have ever met. If Bitcoin rises by $5,000, your voice is right here. If it drops by $10,000, your voice is right here. Have you always been that way, or is this something you developed to keep your emotions at bay so you can make the best decisions possible?
This is how I am. I'm actually less. I showcase even less emotion during my real life. My real interactions with people is like, there's no emotion. So this is me actually already hyping up my demeanor and emotion for my streams. No, I'm not the type of person that's going to be like, getting all emotional. Even a Bitcoin dropped like 5,000 points. Let's just say it dropped to like 15,000 today. It's not like I'm just going to like go on a rant and get all like crazy angry and start yelling and throwing F-bombs left and right. Although I did that once.
Oh
But
man, we got to go back and watch that one. I want to see that show.
I did do that once, and that was a very, very, very good show. I think.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I mean, you know, I just think for me, I think staying cool and collected is the best way to handle things. There's enough panic out there.
Yeah.
From the retail investors, from people that are watching. So they want, you know, they want to watch someone that's cool and collected, not someone that's going to be flip-flopping left and right and switching from one day to another or panicking along with them. Then what's the point? Like, why would you watch someone like that? Like, well, you know, you want to look towards someone that you can trust and rely on and go for cool and collected, you know, information and get educated by them, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't serve any purpose. Like, for example, I hate to throw Jim Cramer out there. People watch him for entertainment. You know, if you actually follow his trades, you'll lose more than anyone else. And you know, and he does that. He's all over the place, right? But he's very entertaining. I don't want to be like Jim Cramer, though some people say I am Jim Cramer of crypto, because I've made some bad calls too. But you know, I just think that we're in this space, you know, educating a lot of people. So we need to have some professionalism and also just continue forward, because you can't just deviate from what you believe in just to, you know, get views, let's say, right? People that do that will eventually just hurt their viewers more and eventually lose all viewership. So you got to stay consistent. And this is me.
You know, George, I'm confused because I thought that when we signed up the packet to become crypto influencers, part of the requirements is we had to be right all the time and we could never get anything wrong. Did you sign a different packet?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think I did. Or I ignored that packet and just move forward. You know, that's the thing. It's like a lot of other, and not just crypto. If you look at just financial influencers, people that talk about finances and people that talk about the stock market and stuff like that, a lot of them have turned to only clickbait material, where every single thumbnail, every single title, every stream, every video is about how it's like so bad and it's only gonna get worse, and it's all for shock value, right?
Right.
And a lot of them turn to that because their viewership has gone down and they don't know what else to do. And those channels, I don't think will do well long term.
No.
Because that's not what people tune in for. They want to see, well, yes, if something's bad, say it, right? But they're looking for, you know, guidance, for hope, right? They're looking to be educated, and you have to be consistent with your message. And once you build that loyalty with your audience, right, then you pretty much have audience or family for life. And that's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, that's so good. There was a guy, I don't even remember his name. I was watching this one guy, and he didn't really have any subscribers, very few subscribers, but all his videos just popped off, and they were clicky titles. But I went and watched them, and I'm like, they were all live. Like, he literally would put this outlandish statement, and then the video had nothing to do, or is saying the exact opposite of it. I was like, okay, you know, that's what you get. You can get high views with no subscribers, but right. You know, that's why I love, you know, the other influencers like you, George, just integral. You know, even like what you just said right there. Hey, we all get things wrong, and we admit when we're wrong. We keep going forward. We expose, but we are people too. Like that's what I think people sometimes forget about influencers. We're humans too. We're investing right alongside you guys. If we make a bad call, just, you know, and I've seen people like, oh, you know, this guy lost me so much money. I'm like, well, anything that I said, I've lost myself money too, because that's how I was operating. And that's why we're so clear about we're not financial advisors. But, you know, George, I told you that was the last question. I got one more. We got a super chat directed for you to answer, and then we'll let you go for today. But Elliot Locke donated saying, Ukraine nuclear plant is on the front line. Aside from the local destruction, how bad will the markets be if either side makes it go supernova?
I mean, horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrible. I don't know what that would actually do. Would there be a ceasefire or a temporary ceasefire to try to like control it? Because I don't think Russia doesn't want that either. So I know from previous reports, there's been shellings and stuff like that, and whenever there's and there was a fire one time, so whenever that happens, usually both sides allow inspectors to go in and kind of, check things, double check things, and repair things if necessary. But yeah, you don't want another Chernobyl to happen. I mean, Russia is still, recovering from that. The latest is, they built some like new fancy dome over it. But once a nuclear power plant goes into meltdown mode, it's like forever. Like you can't, you can't just stop it. You can't blow it up and expect it to just go away, right? So I think both sides would not want that to happen. But if it does, it will be utterly disastrous for markets.
Yeah, wouldn't be good.
It would not. Well, George, thank you so much, man, for joining us here today, and I'm looking forward to having you on again really soon. Make sure everybody who's watching, we got 1,500 people here, almost 1,600. Make sure you guys, if you do not already, I'm actually probably assuming a lot of you do, but for those few of you that don't, go follow George right now. Cryptos Are Us, phenomenal show, and subscribe to him, and go follow him on Twitter as well. George, we'll see you again next time.
All right. Thanks for having me. Take care, guys.
All right, man. Dude, I love having George on. Again, we have Kagan come on. We had some phenomenal guests that come on who have the perfection of emotional tone.
Yeah, we have the best guests.
It is phenomenal. What do you guys think, chat? We got 1,600 people or so watching. What do you guys think about what George said? I want to hear your guys' take. Speaking well of those people, we only have 400 likes. Which, by the way, thank you to everyone who's liked. But we can definitely get more likes on this stream. If you guys love George, and if you love this channel, go ahead and smash that like button. Let's get that up a little higher. We're about to jump in and do some TA here in just a second, but I wanted to see chat's reaction to what is happening there. Let's take a break. Before we jump into that TA, let's do a couple of super chats, because I know I saw a couple of those, Smay.
We have one other one.
One other than Elliot. All right, so let's cover that one, and then we'll jump in and do some TA.
Well, real quick, I have a bone to pick with the audience here.
Uh-oh.
We have 1,400 people watching. And we need to not only hit those like buttons, but you better hit those subscribe buttons, misters and
Smay's
missuses.
getting angry.
So, why don't you hit the subscribe button and stick around? But anyways, I'd love to read this super chat. It's from Matt C. He says, with inflation up, I want to be today's official sponsor of Market Pulse, baby.
Come on. I saw you said that was from Matt C. Yeah. Mike Markle said the same thing the other day. He was like, how do I sponsor a Market Pulse? It's great stuff. Let us know. You can email us.
We can work something out. We'll work something out.
Let's jump over. Let's do some TA. Go to my screen here, Smay. We're going to start out on Bitcoin, and it's got, even since George was here, it's gotten a little bit worse. Let's go down to the hourly chart, because this stuff is moving fast. We're down below 21,000 at the moment on Bitcoin. On the volume on the hourly chart, though, other than that one wick, the volume is not crazy. So let's continue to monitor this as the day goes on. We're overextended on the RSI on that hourly chart, so potentially we could be finding a little place to rest for a second. If the price keeps going down, that might happen, but I do expect we're going to be resting here very soon. But you're going to notice I have a couple different charts here. I'm going to go out to my 4-hourly chart. Or sorry, not charts. We have a couple of these different zones. We pretty much kissed that first zone very nicely. I think technically, if we were to zoom in, we didn't quite get up to it. You guys who have been watching the show know that I was talking about this zone here for a week or two now, when looking at the volume and looking at the fixed range volume, taking on my RSI. This is what we've seen if we went back all the way to this other note. This was a key level that we had to conquer. This box up here is what we were talking about the other day with Kagan, where he was saying he was looking for potentially, if we had some favorable numbers, we could come up here and start kissing 23.5, if not 24,000. We did not get there, but rather this zone right here, you guys see this pocket of volume right here between 20.8 and I had about 23,000. We didn't quite get there. We got up to about 22.7 something. What's the exact number we got? 22.779. So we came like pretty much within $20 of the zone, but it did look like we were ejecting. We'll watch and keep an eye on it. For some reason, there can be an immediate bounce. I do not expect there to be one. What's more significant, though, this is another zone that we're looking at right here that Kagan talked about yesterday when he was giving some advice to Bitcoin traders. And he was talking about how he had set his level coming back to the peak that we had down here. Even though we had a bottom at 17.6, he used this target right here, this wick at 18,600 as his next buy zone. So the wick went a little lower than that, but it's a pretty good buy spot. And he was saying anything up from here, here, obviously, his bonus. He was hoping and waiting for maybe a 23.5, if not 24. But his advice and what he was going to do is if we could not hold this zone right here, again, the top of this zone was around 21,400, the bottom of that zone around 21,100, he was going to go ahead and exit his position. So I'm actually interested to hear from Kagan if he exit his position. But sure enough, we are below. And anyone, if Kagan did enter that trade like he was talking about, that's still a good little trade right there because he would have entered in right here and he could have taken his profit at, he would have taken a 13% profit on his Bitcoin trade. But just updating you guys on what's happening, we are below that. The next level we're looking for, because we're still hovering with a little bit of volume right here. Again, I told you, based off of looking at the volume on the lower charts, we could be starting to see, along with the RSI bottoming out, we could begin to see maybe some rest here. But if we can't hold these levels, the next one we're looking at is potentially dropping down to like about 20,500, if not coming down to the peak that we have right here around 20,200. Again, I said this earlier in the show. If the HODL trophy was awarded today, I would win with my $20,500 prediction. But unfortunately, it is only Tuesday. We got a long time before the HODL trophy winner is announced. If we keep up this bearish momentum, Smay might be the winner when he predicted 20,000 even. Correct, Smay? 20,000 even? Yeah. All right. Well, so keep your eyes on what is happening there. This is what we were talking about, though, now for a couple of days. So I want to just remind you guys, and this is not a I told you so. This is a, hey, continue to monitor these types of things. We discussed the fact that this was a lead up. This rally was a lead up with the expectation that potentially this was whales making one more good move to take some profit and dump and wait for lower prices. What's really interesting is when you start to talk about that Raoul Pal perception, which I have to say is a very interesting one. And I'm not saying we won't come back down to these levels, but I've talked about this a couple times now. Go off my screen for just a second, Smay. George started to touch on this a little bit during when he was on the show. And this concept of people keep saying we have to go down this far, but let's go back into history. Let's go back and look at past bear markets. Let's look at past bull markets. People have called for numbers, and then everyone just jumps on board with those numbers with expectation that that has to happen, and then we don't reach those numbers. I talked about this last week, how a lot of people talk about the $100,000 Bitcoin prediction, but what's not talked about that often is how many analysts were calling for $75,000. They were looking to take profit at $75,000, and that was a very widely held expectation. We didn't get there. We got to 69. We missed it by 6,000. What George talked about was past bear markets where people were calling for downwards of 1,000, and we only got down to about 3,000. What is my point here? If you're asking, like, hey Tim, what's the point of bringing up the past? Well, go back to my screen here, Smay. Go back to my chart. What Raoul Pal is kind of insinuating is, we've known we're in a recession. We've been in a recession now for a long time. Why do we think because a recession is coming that we should drop below these levels? Unless something new breaks, what we're actually talking about is knowing that there's a wrong line. I want to draw my box here. Where do we go? Right here. What we're actually looking at is the bottom level, unless something changes, should be this little zone right here. So potentially, could we have just seen that there were whales who wanted to pump the price to take profit and wait to gobble up more supply down here because they know that a lot of expectations in the space are saying Bitcoin is going to be dropping down here towards 10,000. And if they can convince all the retail investors and the majority of other investors to convince that spot, but they have all the power with a lot of money on the sideline, they can gobble up these prices when we dip back down into this box. And another thing to keep your eyes on and remember about the Bitcoin chart, this is probably the last thing I'm going to talk about on the Bitcoin chart before I move to Ethereum, is that on the daily chart, we do actually now have that daily bullish RSI divergence. I told you guys, I don't think this is the end of it. Again, if you study the Wyckoff method, which would show us a daily bullish RSI divergence with the low spring, the fact that we didn't have a whole lot of volume coming in confirming this upswing lets me know and lets me expect, I think there's one more swing at least down to these areas. Let's say the bottom is in. We're going with that scenario. There's one more swing to the bottom with low volume that is followed potentially by a good increase. And if we don't get volume, then we might have to come back down and maybe we end up spending some time in this range while we wait for the space to get ready and for some more bullish information to come out. However, if we get more bearish information, something we're not expecting, and I saw people talk about this in chat, maybe we actually start to move from, right now we know we're in a recession. Do we start moving towards the ground, the requirements of a depression? That is enough to send us down. That absolutely is enough to send us to these lower levels. I'm not saying it's impossible to come down here, and I'm actually working on, and I'm going to be making a video at least for our members where I kind of help you guys understand a good strategy for DCAing preparing yourself for lower levels on Bitcoin. But I'm not ready to call it just yet. And I've kind of been on the fence about this, and I'm going to stay on the fence. We do not have to go below 17,600. Raoul Pal has a point. That doesn't mean we won't. It just means we do not have to. So until that happens, all the people who are convinced we're going down to 10,000, 12,000, that level, and they have decided to tune out of Bitcoin and wait for those lower levels, there's a chance that they're going to miss the bottom and then have to wait until higher prices to be able to buy back in. Whereas if you strategize and plan yourself accordingly, you can prep yourself for both situations. Let's look at Ethereum real quick before we end TA, and we're going to go back and read some chat and close out the show. Ethereum, as George was talking about, actually started dipping here a couple of days ago. What's going to be really interesting, though, is technically right now, I think Bitcoin's name. Let me look at Bitcoin. Yeah, Bitcoin still set a higher high than this point back here. The question is, where's the bottom going to be? Are we still going to set higher highs and higher lows? Ethereum is still in that camp. And as he kind of said, we've been dipping for a couple days. What if the sell the news on Ethereum really just is not going to be that severe? We got to continue to question that. So let's watch what happens. I think for Ethereum to maybe say, all right, we're no longer setting higher highs and higher lows. Let's go down to this wick right here and watch 14,097, give or take 15,000. And we're only, so what?
1,400.
Thank you for clarifying that, TShroom. I say that all the time. 1,400. It's so hard when you bounce back and forth between Bitcoin and Ethereum. My brain knows what I'm saying, but my mouth said something completely different. Let's watch for 1,500 on Ethereum. If we cannot hold that, then we're making the case for a downtrend. But I'm going to stick to my opinion that I think we could be suppressed. I don't know if we're going to see a new high for Ethereum. You know, you say new high. I don't know if we're going to pass 2,000 here within the next couple of weeks. I do expect a sideways and boring rest of September. However, keep your eyes, just like I was talking about with George, keep your eyes on that supply and the fundamentals of Ethereum and the institutions that are going to want to come into that space. With this dip, there's a lot of money coming in. There's not a lot of volume here on Bitcoin, and I'm going to guarantee you when I type this in, let's see, BTC over USDT, I bet you the money, yep, sure enough, the money is flowing over into Tether, which means they're keeping that ready to go somewhere else. I believe Ethereum could be that project with all the fundamental updates it's having, and even maybe Cardano with what it's having with Vasil hard fork next week. Those are interesting projects for institutions and whales to be pumping some money into to see some increase in their crypto. So that's all the TA I have for you guys today. Continue to monitor these charts, but prepare. You know, something Kagan talked about yesterday. Prepare a plan and then stick to your plan. Too many people just want to wing it. Too many people just want to go off their emotions. They feel one way one day, one way the other. George talked about that on the show today. You don't want to constantly be flip-flopping your emotions. You want to think through the macro to then inform your micro decisions and formulate your plan and stick to it. TShroom, do you have anything to add to that before we go to chat, or are we going to just go straight into it?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Smay, really quick, I will have Caleb Franzen on tomorrow. It's going to be just a TShroom and Smay show, but we will have Caleb Franzen on tomorrow. We're going to unpack the way that the market has reacted, given 24 hours to react to these CPI prints. Go ahead, Smay.
Well, Smay, did you see any others? I saw one super just chats. Came in from Elliot Locke.
Yeah,
was there any other super chats?
I have two other ones, yeah.
Sweet.
All right. So we have one, and I actually have good news on this one, so you guys can get excited. Says G Code Jedi says, get a new background for Smay. And the good thing is, I will. Funny thing about tomorrow, I'm gonna have a new background tomorrow. So tomorrow. So
found a printer.
When you thanks for the update, teacher. We found a printer. But yeah. So tomorrow. So look forward to that. That's another really exciting thing of the show. So you guys get to see whose NFTs I selected.
It's gonna be lit.
So
literally.
You have another one here from Elliot Locke.
We have another one from Elliot Locke here. Says, thank you for you and your team's hard work. Most of my chats I have had. Wait. Sorry.
I have a good idea.
Wow.
Of the answer.
My eyes are getting worse, guys. This is why I'm wearing glasses. Most of my charts, I have a good idea of the answer, but I love to get you and your guest opinion. Good work.
Yeah, Elliot, I thank you guys all the time. And that's what people need to remember. Again, we are a community-based group. You know, I feel like as I've grown over the last couple of years, you know, I'm getting pretty good opinions on things, but I always love to see your guys' thoughts in chat. Just so you guys know, part of my upbringing, part of my journey from being non-crypto Tim to now being the host of this channel had to do with watching how you guys responded to things. This is a community-based education content source. This does not mean you just listen to every single word Tim says or what TShroom says. Even when Jebb was here, you don't just hang on every word Jebb says. It was always meant to be a place where great minds can come together and have an ironing sharpen iron situation where we all grow in this space as together. You know, speaking of, look at Kelly Kellum in chat. That's another guy. I mean, just getting to hear other people's opinions, whether I agree or disagree, allowing me to grow and to diversify my thought is what has increased my knowledge of the crypto space. And so, Elliot, whenever you give super chats, whenever you comment, I love reading those things. And that's to everyone, not just Elliot. I love reading your guys' comments because it helps inform me and help me grow, and I know it helps others as well. So just because you guys know answers to questions doesn't mean you shouldn't ask them. It could help somebody else. You never know, and that's what this place is all about. You know, I saw another question in chat. It wasn't a super chat, but I liked it because I think it was an interesting thought, and then we'll close out the chat portion and we'll have our announcements and move on. Joker's Wild. Shout out to Joker's Wild. You know, I disagree with something he says, but I like the concept he's going at. He said Ethereum garbage got to be more centralized now. All right, so that's a hot, that's a hot take. A lot of people have that view that Ethereum moving away from proof of work to proof of stake is garbage now. You're absolutely right, Joker's Wild, that it is going to become potentially in danger of being more centralized. Proof of stake doesn't mean automatically it has to be, but it does give it a better chance of becoming that way. And I have two takes on that. One, I understand the frustration. I completely understand the frustration. A lot of people who are heavily involved in the crypto space, especially now in the bottom of a bear market, are here because of the concepts of decentralized money, decentralized systems. They're tired of one entity, one power controlling everything. They see that crypto could be the future with its decentralized format. So that's going to make people think, okay, Ethereum's just moving away from that. They're moving to a form where they could become centralized, or they're going to be more centralized than they were before. I understand your frustrations. Here's the thing you need to remember, though. That does not mean Ethereum will die. You can choose not to invest in Ethereum, but there's millions of people who will disagree with you. And then on top of that, I believe in the incoming years, there will be trillions of dollars who disagree with you that will flow into Ethereum. We've lived in a world that was centralized for such a long time, and it's the crypto norm to think of the word centralized as being evil. But it's not necessarily inherently evil because that's how all companies are. Companies are centralized. That's how it has been. Cryptos can succeed being centralized. The question is, should that be the form of money? And so that's where I'm going to keep an eye on this, is that there are people who believe Ethereum could rival Bitcoin as the future backing or at least use case of money, in which case then I would say, yes, I have a problem with that. But Ethereum in terms of its use case, Ethereum in terms of what it can accomplish and build in this world, if it is slightly centralized, is not the end of the world. It is something to keep our eyes on and to monitor and to make sure it does not get out of control. But there are actually cases where centralization allows things to move faster and more efficiently. Case in point, as much as I love Cardano, and you guys know I love Cardano, why is Vasil hard fork taking so long? Because it refuses to be centralized. It refuses to let one authority make the power. So consequently, it's moving a lot slower, and that frustrates people, and that makes people want to get away from Cardano. But that is decentralization. Decentralization has its pros and cons. Centralization has its pros and cons. I don't think it will kill Ethereum, but I love the concept. I love that people are floating that because it lets us all continue to think about what we're invested in, what we're doing, what is our why behind being invested in crypto, and stay with that. So if you're anti-centralization, like Diamond Sauce just commented, hey, maybe Ethereum is not you. Keep an eye on it. Ethereum isn't full out centralized at this point. It still is a decentralized. It just is in danger of going that way. Keep your eyes on Ethereum. If you want to make money, though, it's still going to make you a lot of money. And we're going to continue to talk about it on this channel.
Yeah, and the centralization, I believe, is more about the initial coin offering. So it's, you know, and the how staking, is a little bit more, have more centralization effects. But by no means, I mean, Ethereum is still far and away way more decentralized than, say, the central servers of like Google or Bank of America. Like, it's still a whole nother beast. It's still running on blockchain, which is a whole nother beast. So,
yeah,
Well,
that is all we have for the show today, but make sure you stay tuned at 11:30. What time is it right now? It's about 11:08. So here in about 20 minutes or so, we're going to be doing our membership stream. So all of those green names and blue names in chat that are members, make sure you come back in, tune in for that member stream. It is going to be awesome. Theirs are always a blast. What else we have? I will not be here tomorrow. So we've talked about this a couple times, but in case anyone had not heard, I will be out at my monthly planning meeting, out at my C12 meeting. It's a phenomenal meeting that helps Christian business owners really grow their businesses in a very ethical but still productive way. So those are always helpful to me. I always miss the show, though. I miss seeing you guys, and I will miss having Caleb Franzen on. But TShroom is going to be, I think this will be the first time you host the show, right, TShroom?
This will be the first time I host the show, and I have the HODL trophy, too, so it's going to be extra juicy.
Yeah, and here's what I really encourage you guys. Like, show up. Like, this is a community. Come support TShroom. Come support Smay. Come support Caleb Franzen. Let's continue to build this. This show is bigger than me. This is bigger than any of us. So make sure, fam, you guys join in for tomorrow's show. Just so you guys know, though, my meeting will end around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and I'll be on Around the Blockchain tomorrow night. So also come show support on the BitBoy channel as I'm on Around the Blockchain. It's going to be a blast. That is all I have for you in today's show. But, again, if you loved this content, if you loved having George on here, you love hearing our guests, you love the heartbeat of this channel, and that is to help every single person with community-based, accomplished financial sovereignty. Make sure you not only like every single video you see, but you subscribe to the channel and view all of the content. We love each and every single one of you, and we will see you in the next video. Peace.
Oh, I got a real good feeling.